This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going over UFC Vegas 84. It's Ankalaev versus Walker 2, giving you my thoughts and predictions on that entire card. Pretty, I don't want to call it a good overall card. I think it's fine, but like I am so blue balled up without UFC that like I'm going nuts. I'll take anything, but I'm not like shitting on the card. Like I want it bad, baby. But I like the co-main event. I like the main event mainly because there's that unfinished business, but there's not really a whole ton to that matchup other than if Johnny Walker ends up winning. But yeah, there's what 12 bouts on this card and that's at the UFC Apex. So the desert hasn't really been Johnny Walker's friend as of late. So hopefully he can get over his issues with the desert and maybe pull off an upset here because one of my weird ass, stupid, almost fake bullshit predictions was that Johnny Walker would fight for the title. And I would kind of love to see Johnny Walker fight Alex Pereira. Say if Jamal Hill isn't quite ready yet. I would love that. I think that'd be really fucking funny because we might see something really funny in the sense of Johnny Walker becoming UFC light heavyweight champion or Johnny Walker just being put in a coma. But yeah, let's get started with this entire card. The first fight of the night is what division is this with Joshua Van? It's flyweight. Interesting. Felipe Bunes versus Joshua Van. Bunes minus I got my glasses on. I'm still blind as fuck. Plus 165. Come back on Joshua Van. Minus 200. Uh, I overthought this matchup quite a bit. I overthought it because I do see some value on Bunes, but realistically, more than likely just in the first round because it's just a perception of Bunes. I do think his striking is solid early, but he does tend to panic strike at a certain point. Like he does shoot for takedowns. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but just because he trains with the Pitbull brothers doesn't necessarily mean he is a Pitbull brother. Joshua Van, on the other hand, I like his striking. I like his composure. I like that he had a bit of adversity in the UFC with that fight with Borjas, where he lost the first round. He got dropped, ended up coming back, adjusting, and also winning that unanimous decision. Minus 200, though, I'm still a bit weary on it. I'm not interested in betting this fight, but I do think that Joshua Van possesses everything he needs to actually be a new generational MMA star. I think he has good stand up, definitely. His boxing's very good. I like his IQ. I like that he's young and malleable, that he could definitely learn because he's not a finished product yet, that he can learn proper takedown defense, proper takedowns himself. I think he just has everything a young developing fighter needs. And the first fight he had in the UFC against Zalgas when he was the like short replacement notice fighter, I wasn't certain if he was ready yet. I thought Zalgas was just too experienced for him. And we saw how that went. Like he ended up beating Zalgas relatively easily. Bunes, he's 34 years old at these lighter weight classes. I like that he's long. I like that he does strike well at a distance, but if he doesn't clip or really hurt Joshua early and take his back or dominate him in the wrestling, the athleticism of Joshua Van's eventually going to take over. That is, if Joshua doesn't already like starch him, because with that long body of Bunes, I just like shotgunned a Red Bull before I did this. So I'm a little burpy, but if Joshua attacks the body right off the bat, I think he's going to have a lot of success. I think Bunes, not to say he has a gas tank problem, I think he has kind of a pacing problem where, like, again, his striking early looks pretty decent. Like, a couple of his fights, I'm like, his striking's not bad, but as the fights progress, I'm like, he doesn't have that composure going forward. Like, he kind of panic strikes. Joshua's not really going to have that issue. And we've seen Joshua rip to the body nicely in his last fight with that pressure, push a dude forward. He's going to be able to stuff the takedowns. I think he wins this one by a decision. If he doesn't potentially finish him with like nasty body shots, I'd love to see that. Let me release my blue balls with a nasty body shot knockout from Joshua Van. I'd love to see that, but I'll go with Joshua Van by a decision. In this particular fight, he has to be careful here because he is giving up a bit of height and reach. Bunes is dangerous, definitely, if he can get off on his takedown. Say if he comes in here with a takedown heavy game plan, and Joshua's just not accustomed to like having to wrestle that hard against a guy who really wants to get him to the ground and maybe work off of his back, then we might see Joshua Van in that situation where he is, he's a 22-year-old kid and he'll learn from that. But realistically, though, if Joshua comes in here prepared to stuff takedowns and then just work on that body, I think he's not gonna have an easy time. I think he'll look close to his price tag in the third round, but early on, it's gonna be like, shit, I got him at like minus 200 when I could have live bet him in a way. So I'll go again, Joshua Van by a decision. So another thing, I got a new mic, so hopefully it sounds a lot better. It fucking should, because it's like the most expensive mic in the business. Been pretty fun fucking around with it. Like, I got it really cheap. It's a story for another day, but it was essentially free. But let's move on to what some people might consider free money in Tom Nolan versus Nicholas Motta. Minus 200 for Tom Nolan to come back on Motta plus 160. I think, and I could be wrong, right? Like, who am I? I'm just an idiot on the internet. But my perception would be Tom Nolan's going to come in here and knock the shit out of Nicholas Motta because he fucking sucks. I'm one of those people. That should happen. It better happen. 100% better happen because Nicholas Motta does suck in a particular manner. His last fight pissed me off beyond belief because I was super complimentative of him. Like, it was around the time, I think it was like his fight happened with Ogden. I had said all these pretty nice things about him, like he's looking improved. I think he can become a much more dynamic fighter where he doesn't just box or strike. He can go for takedowns, work his jujitsu, and he made a fucking fool out of me. I'm like, he looks regressed. He looked worse. He got stifled by the very pitter patter minimum striking of Ogden, which, Ogden is known to do that. He can confuse really good strikers with his like awkwardness. Yet Motta didn't even seem interested in trying to win the fight. The awkwardness that happened afterwards, I don't really want to get into that, but like realistically, I got saved. I had a couple parlays with Motta, so I'm not gonna like tempt fate here or really spit in the face of God for saving me in that situation because like I do think the stoppage was bullshit. Ogden should have won, but what am I gonna say? Like, oh, no, thank you, God, no money for me. But I was very disappointed in him, and the way Tom Nolan has been looking in his like, say, if you only saw his like contender series fight, you would think this guy is gonna run through Nicholas Motta. He's gonna clip him. He's super big. He's long for the division. He's what 6'3". I don't think that's the case. I mean, minus 200 is pretty conservative for what I thought he was going to be. I thought it's going to be like maybe like minus 300. It's just watching actual tape on him in his regionals. He does make a lot of sloppy mistakes where I feel a guy, even as incompetent as Motta, he still has skills, man. Like, that's the thing that like it bums me out because I do have a bit of not faith in Motta. I see his talent, I see his potential. It's just that I do think he is squandering it. I don't know if it's like a mental thing where like I know he's putting in the work for damn sure. He's putting in the work on the mat with his striking just to be a little bit more comfortable. But like I think he does have a couple issues where maybe getting knocked out a couple times in the UFC has just made him gun shy. I'm not positive here, but if he is gun shy here against Nolan, Nolan is going to come out here like an undefeated fighter with that confidence and land something hard on Motta that's probably going to knock him out. I am going to go with Tom Nolan, but when I say I'm worried about betting him, I realistically think I am going to go with the under on this one, or the fight doesn't go the distance instead of just betting either guy, because I do think there's a chance Motta can come in here and just use his experience because he lost his last fight. I'm going to count that as a loss. Got submitted by a guy with a ton of experience, maybe not a better fighter than Motta if he were to fight to his potential, but that experience just kind of outshined him. And here I think Motta has that kind of experience to maybe expose the young undefeated fighter for being a little too reckless, a little too like wild. I do think there's positive things to Tom Nolan that if he stays composed, just use his distance, maybe not bum rush, that he can easily pick apart Nicholas Motta and then find that knockout. I'm just not sold on him quite yet, right? I'm not saying he's not going to come out here and maybe starch this guy. I just think that there's a good chance that Motta can look much better than he did his last fight. These deceptive losses and or fights for certain guys that I said a lot of good shit about Motta. I think it's still valid. It's just he has to pull that trigger. He's not bettable for me at all. I think he's one of these guys that like I don't think I'll ever bet on again because of that awkwardness that he provided with the Ogden fight. For Tom Nolan, I do think he is going to have success in the UFC, especially like blasting through guys, but I don't know. I don't know if I want to jump on that big train quite yet. Tom, Big Train Nolan. Again, I'm probably going to go the fight doesn't go the distance or the under on this one because I do think that recklessness may come out of Tom Nolan. But again, I might be saying that now, but those big leaps and bounds that like a 23-year-old guy can make in between his last fight, like because his fight before the UFC and his fight in the Contender Series, it was kind of a big difference. He looked a lot better. It's just that I don't want to see that guy from the regionals come back in the UFC. So I'm a bit weary about that. So I'm going to stay away from this one, but I will go with Nolan first round knockout. I think that undefeated confidence is going to come out and just steamroll Motta. If Motta has a second thought, if he gets hit with a just hard enough jab, I think he'll be like, oh, what do we do here, Nicholas? What do we do? No favelas for me. Gets kicked back to the favelas. Yeah, I'll go with Nolan first round, a knockout. Weston Wilson versus John Silva. I do think Weston Wilson, for me anyways, is worth a shot at plus 550 here. John Silva, the Lord Assassin, is minus 800. I think he does possess the skills to give John Silva plus 550 worth of issues, right? I think his submissions are pretty crafty. I think he's a dangerous fighter, but if y'all remember, if any of y'all can remember what I said about Weston Wilson when he fought Brito, I said I only watched like 12 seconds of his tape, and I knew immediately this guy's going to get knocked out brutally by Brito. And if Brito doesn't knock him out in the first round, then that guy's a piece of shit and he should be cut. Luckily for me, Brito knocked him out in the first round, and then we got to see that hilarity against Jonathan Pierce. Which after that, Brito's on like my high list of like he's got something. John Silva, the dude, I'm gonna probably sound a bit harsh, but I don't think he is a martial artist, right? Weston Wilson is a martial artist. He's got that skill set. He's got the karate background, trains with Wonder Boy. He's got good jujitsu, long arms. He's a fucking giant for the division at featherweight. He threatened Brito with like a knee bar and submission. So I do think that if he's able to do that to Brito, right? Like Brito's a top dude and Brito handled it fine. Just that ability to put someone in danger is worth a shot for me at plus 550. But for John Silva, when I say he's not a martial artist, he is skilled, he's athletic, but I think he's more of a fighter. And that to me is probably a little bit better than what Weston Wilson has. Weston Wilson's going to rely on technique. John Silva's going to go out there and fucking spank you. Like, I like the way he throws his punches. I like how confident he is. I like his movement. Minus 800 for me, it ain't quite there yet. I will take him to win by knockout. I think he does it like in the first or second round. He doesn't rush things, so I don't think the first round is the way to go because he doesn't rush things. And I mean, like, he takes his time picking apart his guys. Like, he downloads data, trains out of the Fighting Nerds. So I know he's got a brain in between his head. A brain in between, whatever, between his ears. I just don't fully believe he should be minus 800. I think that's what Brito was against Weston Wilson. And now the guy who gave Brito a little bit of trouble on short notice is also plus 550, and he's fighting someone that's not at the caliber of Brito at this time. So that is my connection as to why I'm going to take a shot on Wilson. I'm not going to bet him because I can't trust the guy, man. He got knocked out by what's his name? That's Ishihara, and Ishihara's like doing terribly at this time, and that was like a year ago. Like again, I think Weston is very, very capable. It's just that if he gets hitting that button, he's gonna go down. So I'll go with Silva in the second round. I think Silva hits really hard. I think he moves well, but I'd rather take my chance with that plus 550. And I think the one thing I wanted to avoid was talk too positively about Weston Wilson. And here I am. Moving on here, we've got bantamweight bout. Fareed Basharat. I don't know. Has that always been his nickname? I almost read it as Fergalicious Fareed Basharat. I would have been like, okay, he's going to win this fight. but what he is minus 175. Come back to Taylor double impact Lapilus, which I'm not sure what that means. Being that he is French, it gives me the implication that's like double penetration, double impact. I could be mistaken. I hope I am, but plus 145 for Taylor Lapilus. So with Taylor, he is what, 19-3. He has fought good competition. I know. I mean, he beat the shit out of Nate Maness. And if you were to watch that fight against him and Maness for like, what title was it? XFL, TKO. That was 4 years ago. That's crazy. You would be mistaken to think Nate Maness sucks ass. I don't think Nate Maness sucks ass. I just think Taylor Lapilus has a specific style to really give people, in certain cases, better strikers, good strikers, some issues. I like his style. I really do like his. It's a very kind of a Frenchy kickboxing style. I know. I mean, he trains out of the MMA Factory. He isn't like a Cyril Gane type of fighter in the sense that like Cyril will actually knock you out. Taylor's more of a like point based type of kickboxer. But I like what he does. Like I was watching that Manus fight, and in particular because he knocked him out with like a side body kick, and I saw how he peppered the body of Manus, kind of throwing what I would like to call like, I don't know what shit. How would I describe these kicks? They weren't. They were like just regular body kicks, but they weren't meant to be full force. They were just kind of like little taps. But he was hitting with the shin. It didn't look very impactful. It just kind of like a little nuisance. Like, why are you tapping me to the belly just so the judges can see that you actually like landed something? But I do think those eventually land and they add up. So I was kind of like, that's an interesting little technique, little shit like that I like to pick up on. And I found that impressive. His takedown defense is very good. Nice jab. I think he's a solid fighter, and I think he is going to give Farid Basharat some trouble here. But for me, Basharat is, he, especially specifically Farid. I think he is the better of the two Basharat brothers. I think he isn't as goofy and awkward as what's his older brother's name, Javid. Javid to me looks like he's malnutritioned, malnourished at the weight class. As for Farid, he looks a lot better. He looks like he actually fits in that division. His ground game definitely improved. I like the shit he and that Twitter monster fucking Jake Shields have been doing. I don't know if Jake Shields had a career besides being a Twitter troll, but like he's helping this guy with his jiu-jitsu somehow. And I like his striking. I like mostly his feints, but the one thing that I think is going to really put him apart from the striking sense against Taylor Lapilus is that I actually really like his single leg takedown. The like pushing and pulling with that single leg, you eventually get him down. He's got a pretty solid single leg. I really appreciated watching that tape. And I think even if he is having trouble on the feet with Taylor Lapilus, I think he has that ability to use the single leg. I've noticed also with Taylor, and I could be wrong, I didn't watch every bit of tape on Taylor, but normally he's really good at stuffing takedowns when they're like a single or blast. Not a single, I'm sorry, when it's like a blast double or just against the cage, he's got really good defense. But I don't know how good his single leg defense is. And I like what I see from Farid's single leg, where if, say, he isn't getting off on the striking, he's maybe getting jabbed up a bit, which if I were Taylor, jab up the nose. I noticed Farid's nose is fucking huge. As a guy with a big nose myself, we don't like that shit. So it's kind of funny that he has a big nose when he doesn't like a particular. Anyways, yeah, Taylor should attack the nose. But yeah, in that particular case, I think Farid's going to be able to get that single leg, get some control time. And I guess at that point, we'll see what he can do against Taylor. And if Taylor can get back up, I think at that point, Taylor isn't really known to throw a whole ton of hard strikes. I think if he does get back up, he'll be throwing harder strikes. And I want to see how Farid does, because I don't think he's had a whole ton of resistance in his career in the UFC. I think he's gotten like really good opponents, even though what's his name, Clayton Rodriguez, I thought was going to give him a hell of a lot more trouble. He made it look really easy against him. So I want to see how legit Farid Basharat is, because although Taylor kind of gives the impression of a guy who doesn't belong in the UFC, maybe that's just me, he's a solid fighter. He definitely, I think, belongs. We saw what he did against that colon cancer. Yeah, that was a weird fight, man. Colin had no head movement, and he made it look easy against him. So maybe, like, I don't like to think of like, oh, he's on a good win streak. He just beat an undefeated fighter. Now I'm looking at his back catalog, right? Like he's got some skill to him that I think matches up well against Farid Basharat. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Basharat by a decision. I just think that the grappling ability of Basharat, the ability to control on the ground, is going to really dictate him winning this fight. So right now, Basharat by a decision. Next bout, we've got Marcus McGhee versus Gaston Bolanos. Marcus McGhee, again, a huge favorite. He's minus 325, come back on Bolano plus 250. I'm going to go with McGhee, and I'll tell you why I'm going with McGhee. I think it's a pretty, it's not as simple as he's the better fighter, the better mixed martial artist. Realistically, the best way to describe why I think Bolanos is ultimately going to lose, especially by a submission, is that I do think Bolanos, he's plus 250. I do think he is capable of beating quite possibly anybody in the world, especially at bantamweight. I think he can knock out almost anyone in that division. The downside of Bolanos is he's also more than capable of losing to the bottom of the barrel of this division. And Marcus is not the bottom of the barrel. I think Marcus is super athletic. He hits hard. He's uber confident. I think he's got a ton of skill, right? And on top of that, I do expect him to actually use his ground game here. He's not particularly in the UFC, especially, he hasn't really been actively looking for takedowns. I think he's gotten those two finishes. The first fight against Journey Newsom, he dropped him, then he submitted him. I really like the control that he actually had on Journey, and then eventually sunk in that rear naked choke. Then he blasted the shit out of JB Buys. And you can look at that and say, like, yeah, he's not fighting top competition, not necessarily the best strikers. Gaston at least is a good striker, but his ground game leaves a lot to be desired. I went back and I watched the Aaron Phillips fight. I was there live in Kansas City watching it, and I thought Bolanos did enough live watching that. Going back, I'm like, I can see why people were pissed off, because it was not a good look for Bolanos in his UFC debut. And I think one judge gave him a 30-27. And I'm like, damn, I want to see what Marcus is going to do to this guy. And I do think that like 8 out of 10 times Marcus McGhee beats Bolanos. Those 2 times that he loses out of 10 is because he gets a little too overconfident on the feet and forgets that he can take him down and submit him. And as long as that doesn't happen here, I think Marcus is going to find that finish. And I think he's going to take his back, submit him with a rear naked choke. So I'm going to go with McGhee, second round submission. Next bout, Matthew Semelsberger versus Preston Pressure Parsons, Triple P. Semelsberger minus 130, come back on Parsons is plus 110. The issue with Semi, I think he should be a bigger favorite here. Like, I'm not going to mince words. I'm going to take him by knockout in the first round. That's kind of like a noob thing to say, like, oh, Preston Parsons, no, Semelsberger hits really hard. I think he's going to win by knockout. Preston, to me, like, my ultimate assessment of Preston Parsons is that he's a pretty solid fighter, really good jiu-jitsu. I think every single one of his victories has been by a submission, other than, I believe, the decision to Evan Elder, where he just dominated him on the mat. And Evan's a lightweight now. The thing with Preston is that I think his striking is pretty decent. Like, he lands punches well, but he doesn't fully engage. He doesn't commit to the striking. It's like, for whatever reason, and I could be way off on it, to me it looks like, obviously, he sets up his grappling with his strikes. Like, he engages in boxing and kickboxing early, only to go for that takedown. But what I see in that just throwaway striking, as I would want to call it, it's not bad. Like, it's almost like he became this is just me exaggerating. It's like he became a high level kickboxer just so he can throw off his opponents when he goes for his shitty takedowns. That's kind of the way I see him. Like, it's not bad. Like, his striking's not bad. Just commit a little bit more. But it's almost like he's panicked. Preston panicked Parsons. He's panicked and he goes for the takedown when it's like inopportune. And I think he can get those takedowns. But Matthew Semelsberger, if he clips him once, man, he does hit ridiculously hard. I do think he has improved his takedown defense and his takedowns himself. He's had a couple of rough losses as of late. He lost to Jeremiah Wells after essentially knocking him out multiple times. And his last fight, I thought he was looking pretty good until he wasn't. I don't know if it was the altitude or whatever, but like, it just is what it is, right? It was just a much tougher fight than what we anticipated. For Preston, though, I do think, unfortunately, he does kind of crack under pressure, especially the pressure of another man's fist in his jaw. So I'm going to go with Matthew Semelsberger. Honestly, the line minus 130 on Semelsberger, a guy who can get the first round knockout, I rather take my shot with him. Like, it's not like he's like minus 200, where I really, funny enough, think the line was going to be at, like it would close. Um, yeah, I think he can stuff takedowns and land shots. So I'll go with the Semelsberger. I might put some money on him. I'm not sure what I'll do with the bet, but I am considering betting Semelsberger either straight or putting him on a parlay. But I'll go again, round number 1. All right, let me take a drink. Andre Arlovski versus Waldo Cortez Acosta, minus 400 for Salsa Boy. Come back on the Pitbull, plus 310. Yeah, it's going to be Acosta by knockout, which is interesting here. Like, I've picked against Acosta, and I mean, I've picked the worst fighters in the UFC ever at heavyweight to beat him, because like, he doesn't have the mixed martial art complete game yet, right? Like, he doesn't check kicks. You can probably take him down if you really, really wanted to, and probably hold him down there. And I bet against him really in every single one of his UFC fights, other than his last one against Bresky, where I'm like, nah, this fucker's knocking him out. By the way, that fight card, which was the Korean Zombie versus Max Holloway card, I look back, I'm like, God damn, I killed it that night. Was it that? Yeah, that was that one. Damn, I killed it that fucking night. Good times. But yeah, I picked against him against Vandera. I thought Vandera did enough with the leg kicks, but I guess judges didn't like pussy kicks. They like punches. Chase Sherman broke. And then finally, DeLima did exactly what I was so confident in DeLima that it was like minus 400 going into the third round. I max bet the shit out of that line. I'm like, fuck it. He's not losing this fight. He might lose the round, but he ain't losing the fight. So I won like a couple $100 there. But yeah, with Bresky, I'm like, yeah, Bresky's going to get knocked out here. I actually bet the first round knockout, and I bet some other shit with Acosta. And I think that knockout is really going to do Cortez well. He hasn't really been getting the knockouts. He has a nasty fastball, but realistically, he did fight some really durable dudes early, like Chase Sherman, fucking stupid. Fucking stupid jaw. Same thing with Vandera, stupid jaw. And Bresky, he may have that legendary Polish power, but he doesn't have that chin. Arlovski, what can I really say about the guy? Like, he's at that age, 44 years old. He's been knocked out a whole ton of times. He lost to one of the guys, bottom of the barrel dudes, that I think in Don'Tale Mayes. Dude, like, I don't think his style is working anymore. Like, all he had to do was avoid Don'Tale, and then Don'Tale just cracked him and finished him. I think if Cortez hits him with something hard, like, the dude throws that fastball really well. Like, I really do like Arlovski. I bet on him as a dog multiple times, but in this case here, where it's like a boxer versus boxer, I don't think the style of Arlovski is gonna do him well here. Even if he is like outpointing Cortez, I think Cortez eventually lands something hard, but I think Acosta has more activity that the judges like, right? I mean, I go back to the Vandera fight where Vandera was landing those kicks, but Acosta was just doing more with the hands. And essentially, he had a better Arlovski style to win that particular decision. So I think he might even potentially out Arlovski on a way to a knockout. So I will go with Acosta by knockout in the second round. I think if he comes out here, not only aggressive, but just boxing oriented, just go forward, land on Arlovski, I think he can crack him early, but I'll go with Costa by second round knockout. Ooh, Phil Hawes versus Bruno Ferreira at middleweight, the main card opener. Now, damn, this fucking fight, man, it's been haunting me for like days because Phil Hawes, I have to like get over my appreciation for Phil Hawes and what he does well. He does a lot well. I like that he can take a knockout very well. Like, he comes back, he puts in the work, doesn't discourage him from trying to progress and actually still be best in the world, or attempt to be anyways. He has a lot going for him, right? Like, he's super fast, he hits hard, he's got the wrestling. Poor chin though, can't take it anymore. Bruno Ferreira, there's a lot to like about him. And the odds right now that it's minus 125 for Ferreira, come back on Phil Hawes plus 105. It was tempting when I saw Phil Hawes at like plus 125-ish, but it's not tempting anymore because, like, I think either guy can get knocked out. Bruno, we saw him get knocked out kind of funny because he threw a stupid naked leg kick against a 6 foot tall fighter. And I'm like, dude, you did the one thing you should not have ever have done against that guy, yet you did it. And I do worry about how he's gonna be in the cage after getting knocked out like that. It wasn't the worst knockout because Phil Hawes, if this was like an award season, like Phil Hawes would always get worst knockout of the year. But Bruno, like it was like he landed on his head backwards because he got a kick checked. So it almost seemed like the knockout came from the canvas, not from the guy's hands. The additional brain damage came from the guy's hands. And what was his name? I remember thinking, I do not want to fucking learn his name. Neural stun Rizubev. I'm like, damn, like I hope he loses and he just goes away. But no, he ended up staying here. So I have to learn his name eventually. But yeah, Phil Hawes, he keeps progressing even against his last fight against Ikram. I'm like, damn, Ikram's kind of getting his ass beat by Phil. Phil's looking good. He's looking fast, throwing lots of kicks. He's landing good punches, but his chin just couldn't take it. I am super excited to see this fight because, like, I am rooting for Phil Hawes, but I cannot fall for that trap again, right? Like there's like a good chance that Phil Hawes can come out here and look like the vintage Phil Hawes, but I just he's not to be trusted with that chin, man. Like I hate how tempting it is. This is the apple in the Garden of Eden. Like, hey, eat me. But it's like, shit, Phil Hawes, like I'm gonna get kicked out, and God's not gonna be happy. That's how I feel with Phil Hawes. Like, hey, I want that apple, but if I eat it, God's gonna kick my ass out. So I don't want to get kicked out. So I'm gonna go with Bruno Ferreira by knockout in the first round. Like he's known to get those first round knockouts, but like, it's very much so a I'm not interested in betting this at this time. Like Phil Hawes had, if he was like minus, or I'm sorry, plus 300, I'd be like, take my money. Fuck you, God. I'll take my chances. But at this point, Bruno Ferreira, if he just comes out here like the bruising idiot Hulk again, I think he's got that power. I think he's got the chin enough to be able to withstand anything from Phil Haas. Uh, I'm just curious to see because Bruno Ferreira kind of reminds me of a dude. If I remember his name correctly, I think it was like Daniel Sarafian, who he fought years ago. Is that his name? Daniel Sarafian? Yeah, kind of like a bulky dude. And I had high hopes with the guy back in the day. I'm like, oh, this guy looks like a good fighter. But damn, he's 41 now. Jesus. But yeah, he would have like good fights because he was kind of undersized. Was he at middleweight? Yeah, he's at middleweight. He was like 5'9". So it kind of reminds me of that dude as well. But eventually he kind of got figured out. Like, hey, he's kind of stubby. And he's the same way. He's like 5'10". He's Jack, though. He's a fucking fire hydrant. And Phil Haas, if he can get consistent takedowns, there's a good chance here. But again, like I can't. I rather not take the shot here. It is the under for sure, or just fight ends in knockout is probably what I'll end up doing if I'm provided that line by Bovada because they're fucking stingy. Moving on, Ricky Simone versus Mario Bautista. Simone minus 150. Come back on Bautista is plus 125. Well, yeah, that reminds me, like every time I would see Ricky Simon, I'm like, ah, man, Ricky Simone. I just realized that, like, because I got a cousin named Simon, so it just always reminds me of my cousin Simon when I would see Ricky Simone. But what's funny is that, like, I used to think that Ricky Simone was Mexican or Hispanic, so I'd be like, oh, he's one of us, Simone. So now he's fighting an actual Mexican in Mario Bautista, who, oh, damn. I always look at Mario Bautista and I'm like, he is part of that down south Mexico, man. Because if you look at both of us, we ain't fucking talking the same language, if you know what I mean. Well, it's just say that my people kind of came in there and made them speak my language. But interesting bout, minus 150 for Ricky Simone. Come back on Mario Bautista is plus 125. It's another fight that I'm like going back and forth on because, like, depending on the situation, right? If Ricky Simone comes out here and just blasts Mario Batista with like takedown attempt after takedown attempt and just kind of stifles him, that's his path to victory. And I think he's good at that. Like he's a powerful little dude, hits hard. And Mario Batista, this is a perfect example to see how good he really is because On paper, he's the better striker. I think he's got the better jujitsu. He doesn't have the strength advantage, although he is kind of getting on that like lean acai protein type of shit, if you know what I'm saying. And I think his just overall game is better. But I had some concerns with his last fight against Damon Blackshear where it just seemed odd to me. Like he didn't look as dominant as he was supposed to. And that's not to say like he was supposed to kind of run through Damon. Damon's a solid fighter. It's just like his striking didn't look what I needed it to look like. His wrestling defense didn't. Up until the third round, I was like, okay, here's what we expected, right? Like you go for the takedowns. I don't know if Mario's going to attempt takedowns against Ricky, which I think he should. I think if he gets it to the ground, use your jujitsu black belt, take his back, work those submissions. It's not even about trying to submit Ricky. Like, of course you want to, but Ricky's probably just going to get you off of him with his monkey strength. It's just, again, having that fight IQ to know I am winning this fight with the control, with the submission attempts. I don't know if Mario's just going to try to strike with him. Another thing is that, like, if Ricky does kind of feint takedowns, Mario is known to go for that flying jump knee, and he's knocked out some wrestlers in the past. Yeah, I don't know, man. This one's a really tough fight because I can see it going both ways. I can see Mario stuffing takedowns, even getting back up, maybe even playing the guard game and going for arm bars and possibly being successful, kind of showing like, yo, man, I am not the same fighter that I was like when I first came into the UFC. Like he's progressed. And Ricky, I've seen more bad from him than honestly good. Like he has also improved, but in his last fight, like he didn't pull the trigger fast enough against Song Yadong. And when Song was able to stuff those takedowns, and I'm not comparing Song and Mario Bautista. I think Song fucking ruins the life of Mario Bautista. Breaks a ton of his teeth. He has to, he's already ugly as it is. But yeah, I think that if Mario can kind of have that same type of style fight that Song Yadong had, just stuff takedowns, walk him down, apply the pressure. The added thing is Mario, I know he's been working on his wrestling. Go for takedowns yourself. See if you can get these scrambles. Even if he stuffs the takedown, maybe you can get the back for a moment. Maybe you can jump and like get the full over under on him, and then maybe work your legs, get a body triangle on him because he's going to be the longer dude. Funny enough, he's going to have an inch reach disadvantage against Ricky Simone. Another thing is if Ricky just kind of blindly starts swanging and banging, Mario's been chinned before. It's a super close fight. This is one of the fights that I'm more interested in because it does show what high level the bantamweight division is. Because what Ricky's number 11, Mario's number 23. So that's like, damn, like if Mario can beat Ricky, that shows that like these rankings are fucking nuts at bantamweight because there's so many people that can have that spot that can be close to the top 10, even if they're like number 23 or etc. I'm gonna trust at this point Mario Bautista. I'm going to hope that he put on his wrestling shoes even harder now, learn to stuff these takedowns. I do also think he's going to have the cardio advantage if it does get to like a high paced fight because he does train at the MMA lab. It's in Glendale, Arizona. I just get the feeling that's a little better environment than like Portland, Washington, Portland, Oregon. Is it Portland, Oregon? Yeah. I thought he trained at, yeah, he's from Vancouver, Washington. I like Vancouver, Washington a lot, by the way. Fucking love the trees and shit. Funny enough, though, I am looking to go to Arizona. I've never been. I kind of want to check that out. I like the desert as well. I like possibly the idea of fighting a rattlesnake. Probably losing that battle, but just the thought of fighting a rattlesnake would be fucking cool. I'm going to go with Batista to win this one by a decision here. There's a good chance as well that if Mario does just kind of faint a lot, and then as Ricky is possibly attempting a takedown, maybe a blast double, then he just blasts him with a flying knee. So I'll go with Mario Bautista by a decision. All right, next fight. There's a lot of talks about Jim Miller, right? Like, why is Jim Miller taking this fight when UFC 300's around the corner? So he better not get hurt. He better not get cut. He needs to make UFC 300. And now he's fighting Mowgli Benitez, where Benitez is minus 125. Benitez is 35. Jim Miller is 40. And when's the last time that he fought Benitez? He almost a year and a half ago against Charlie Ontiveros. I'm gonna make this really, really short. I'm going with Jim Miller because he has to know something, right? Why is he taking this fight? Like, I know they have been scheduled before. I think it was Hernandez who stepped in for Benitez when he got injured and he was going to fight Jim Miller. Like, Jim Miller at 40 years old, to me, still has a lot in the tank. He's still very, very skilled at lightweight. He just still has it. Like, I haven't seen any real change in him in like the last few years. I'm like, he's still the same fighter. Like, he's still tough. It's almost like he developed like old man strength with his punches now. He's just knocking fools out. And shit, Jesse Butler, that knockout was absolutely brutal. And from Benitez, like to me, like he's not really shown that type of level for me. Like he's a solid enough kickboxer. You know, the myth of him kicking so fucking hard. Jim Miller also kicks really, really hard. Like he was one of the other guys that was implementing that low calf kick early. I do remember betting Dustin Poirier against Jim Miller. I know some of you might like, what the fuck are you talking about? You bet Dustin Poirier. This is way before, this is, the world was great. Dustin Poirier and Colby and Masvidal were all buddies at ATT at this time. But yeah, Jim Miller was throwing nasty low kicks, and he does that very well as well. And on top of that, he's got the submission ability. He's just been more active for me, right? He's just definitely been more active. Even fighting Hernandez, it was really close. I just think all the upside is for Jim Miller. I just think he can actually get a knockout in the first 2 rounds. So I'm going to go Jim Miller for the knockout. Just mainly that activity. I think they are very evenly matched, but the upside is Jim Miller's been fighting more recently than Mowgli. And to me, Mowgli doesn't have too much to offer. Like in the past, he was just this tough Mexican dude, went forward, good kickboxing, good boxing, good chin. He's been knocked out a few times. And I just think that if Jim Miller shows his overall game, he can probably dominate Gabriel and definitely knock him out as well. So I'll go with a knockout for Jim Miller, round number 2. All right, co-main event, Matheus Nicolau versus Manel Kape 2. I don't know, like part of me wants to just be very blunt about this, and I'm sure if you've been watching MMA for a long time, you kind of know what the breakdown's going to be. But to me, like Manel Kape minus 205, Matheus Nicolau plus 165. Simply put, man, if Manel Kape does not knock out Nicolau, this it, because I get sick and tired of Manel Kape because he's one of these guys who should be knocking everybody the fuck out, especially Nicolau. And knowing what Nicolau brings to the table, right? Kind of that, like, not awkward, but it's awkward to me because when he moves around, it looks like a fucking rodent just scurrying along the cage. It's like not really engaging, but when he does engage, he kind of catches you and you're like, what the fuck? Manel Kape should come in here, just blast Nicolau. Don't give him time to breathe. It's just when I go back and watch his first fight with him, where he lost the split decision, I'm like, dude, like that's my biggest gripe with Manel Kape. Like, just go for it, man. Like, you're more talented, you hit harder, you got it all, yet you kind of want to showboat. Like you don't really got it sometimes. I don't know if it's just himself. He's just a little too like laid back. Like, just go out there and fucking finish this guy. Like, there's a chance. There's a very good chance this shit gets extended. I mean, it needs to be for me a first round knockout or don't give him a title shot. That should be what Eric Nixick should be telling Manel Kape. Like, dude, you don't go out there and you don't get the first round knockout, you're not getting a title shot. They're gonna give it to fucking, I don't know. They'll get Brandon Moreno. They'll be like, fuck Albazi. Let's just put him in there with Pantoja again. Like, I'd be like getting him hyped up. Like, go in there and destroy this guy. That's what should happen, right? That's what I'm gonna pick. First round knockout. Not that I'm like uber confident in it. I am gonna pick Kape. I am gonna bet Kape. I'm gonna bet him by knockout. I'm gonna bet him in round number 1. Like, one of those motherfuckers is bound to hit. But if he doesn't, again, finish Nicolau, a guy who just recently got knocked out, I do honestly think, like, I am picking round number 1 because I am very hopeful and I'm willing it into existence. But I do think that Nicolau, whose game as of late has been very, very like, oh, you can't get me type of shit, it's going to be even worse because he just got knocked out nasty doing that style where Brandon Royval was just kind of waiting for him as he's like switching and like moving around and shit. Then he blasts him with that knee up the middle. I'm like, God damn. I got so happy, man. Like, again, that was in Kansas City. I was there screaming, like, fuck him up, Royval. And he ended up doing it. He listened to me. In this case, like, Kape, just let your fucking hands go. Let an uppercut blast him up. Like, Nicolau uses that style because his chin isn't the greatest, realistically, right? Like, if you crack him well, he's going to get wobbled. Like, it's not just because he got knocked out by Royval with that beautiful knee. Like, even going back when he fought in the UFC in his first stint, he fought a guy named Dustin Ortiz, and Ortiz blasted him with a head kick that he blocked with his glove, and it still knocked him out. And Manel Kape, man, those shots that he was landing on that poor boy from the favelas, Dos Santos, Felipe Dos Santos, I'm like, damn, he's beating his ass. But even then, I'm like, damn, this kid's still bringing it to Kape. I just need to see that, man. I cannot, like, I don't even want to talk about anything else that could happen. If it's not a first round knockout, to me, fuck this guy. But yeah, I'm going with Kape, first round knockout. It's knockout or bust for me. Like, I swear, man, if he does not get this knockout, I'm going to be fucking pissed. Like, fuck this guy. I'm going to be talking shit. I don't care if every other bet I get wins, right? Second round knockout, if I bet that, just knockout, whatever. I'd still be fucking pissed if he doesn't get the first round knockout. So yeah, first round or bust for Kape. Not to say that that's his only path to victory. I think he can do anything he wants to Nicolau if he's fighting him, not if he's playing around with him like in the past. That's what pisses me off about Kape because I've seen it, man. We seen it. We seen it with our eyes, boy. We seen how good he is. It's just that like he likes to fuck around sometimes, and I'm like, first round or nothing. Moving on, main event, the rematch. Two rematches, funny enough, in this card, light heavyweight division. Funny thing about, well, I'll tell you the odds. Minus 450 for Ankalaev. Come back on Johnny Walker plus 350. Ankalaev has not won a fight since 2022. That's crazy to think. It's just been either a no contest or a draw. What the fuck, man? Like, this was a guy that we thought would be fighting for the title, and he did fight for the title. The, I guess, vacated title. Yet he just couldn't do it. He couldn't beat the guy who once held it. Like, if that was his title fight, it was bad, man. It was not the best performance. And as of late, I feel like he is. I don't know if he's hitting that peak where it's just he's just never going to win a UFC title. Maybe not even fight for one ever again. That's what I'm worried about with Ankalaev, especially at minus 450 here against Johnny Walker. Like, realistically, though, Magomed has all the tools to make this easy against Johnny. Johnny, I've seen the dude get held down before, get out grappled. That was years ago. With that genetic freakness that Johnny Walker has, even if he just now learned how to wrestle, I think he'd be good enough to stuff takedowns. It's just that, like, he does possess that freak athleticism, that ridiculous power. And on top of that, I do think that if Johnny Walker were to engage in the wrestling, maybe take Magomed's back and then jump on him. The dude's 6'6". He's huge. Man, it'd just be rough for Ankalaev. So he cannot allow that to happen. I think that would be the best option for Johnny, other than doing something fucking crazy on the feet. But for me, I think it is Ankalaev who's going to win this fight. I think he does just more overall, especially engaging in the clinch work. Basically the same thing that he did in the first round, other than, illegally kneeing his opponent. Even if that does happen again, I don't think it's going to end like the last fight, right? It was just a very, very odd situation there with Johnny. But it's so funny that it happened to Johnny Walker. Like, it would have not happened to anyone else other than Johnny Walker. The best thing as well is just like he pushes the ref, like, let's fucking go. Yeah, like he had no idea what he just said. It's just so fucking funny. Like, I like anytime Johnny Walker loses, it's really fucking funny. Like, even if in this case he didn't lose, it just went into a no contest, it was still hilarious. But man, I just do think Ankalaev will push that wrestling, take him down, trying to prove a point, eventually ground and pound him, say round number 2 or 3. I am rooting for Johnny, though. Like us Johnnies, we got to stick together. But I am rooting for Johnny here to get a knockout, because, like, to me, Ankalaev, I hate to say it, man, he's kind of a bust for me. Like, he was supposed to be this guy that was supposed to beat all these dudes in the division. He showed all this great talent, But like as of late, I'm like, I think I've seen his cap. I think I've seen the inability to like sometimes finish fights, leave his opponents in there for too long, give them chances, not utilize his wrestling, like be overconfident on the feet, be overconfident with his ability to like take damage. Like, oh, this guy's kicking me. Like, oh, this is not, oh, fuck, what's going on with my leg now? And Johnny would be smart to do that, like attack the legs, like attack the body, use your long range weapons. Like even if you get taken down, like I think his jujitsu's improved enough to maybe play off of the bottom. Like Johnny's such a weird fighter that even if he does get taken down and he isn't full guard, just starts like slamming on him. It can cause some damage, maybe cut him. Like he's just that kind of an odd anomaly type fighter that even in a disadvantageous position, he can do damage because he's just so ridiculously long and huge. Like those Thor-like hammer fists that it was landing on Paul Craig on one fucking leg. Like, dude is uber dangerous. He's like the greatest glass cannon to ever exist. I would have loved to have seen Johnny Walker versus Alistair Overeem for that title of the glass cannon, which is like I guess it's a glass belt. Good symbolism there, I suppose. But yeah, I am going to go with the Ankalaev for round number 2 knockout. Just get him to the ground, pound him out, and go from there. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments of the card itself, what you think about the main event, the co-main event. Like, how are you betting this card? Because it's a new year. You don't want to make the same mistakes like last year. Like last year, like I hit like 60, I brought it up 67 point something percent accuracy. I am trying to get like maybe 75 this year. So I am going to do not necessarily less risk, right? I'm a big risk taker. All we're doing here is betting on fucking professional athletes, grown fucking men to beat each other's ass. Sometimes women, but we don't talk about that. But it's a risk you're always taking. So how are we going to approach these fights? You know, are we going with like rounds, unders, props? I'm going to try to just do what seems most logical for me. I try to avoid props sometimes just because like I've been I've been bit in the ass by props because like, oh shit, why did I go that route? Just take them by money line. Sometimes money line is better. But yeah, this whole year should be on the up and up, right? Like, well, realistically, let's check this out. I got a brand new mic. This shit ain't fucking cheap, so I must be doing something right? But yeah, Johnny TigerBomb MMA, and I will catch you. What is it? UFC 2 something? It is Strickland versus that black African beast, Dricus Duplessis, which I got something special for that. So I will see you in a couple weeks.